So good to have Marvin Rees with us. Obviously, Mayor of Bristol, just re-elected, and has walked so closely with us over the years, including as part of that politics social action sphere, Crystal Action Bristol. And so, Marvin, it's just terrific in sort of 5-10 minutes now to ask you a few little questions. And first of all, really just to celebrate, what God has done over these last 5 years or so across Bristol region. Especially ways in which the Christian community has been engaging more with you as the mayor and One City Office and with the council for the good of Bristol. Any thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, there is actually. I mean, I think it's very easy to begin to take the current situation for granted, to see it as the norm. And sometimes you do need to just stop and remember back whole periods of time, not just what it was like yesterday, because we've grown into the current situation where the church is really stepping up to lead. I mean, look at what just happened just now for the benefit of those watching. I came in, my cabinet lead for climate ecology, waste and energy came in, but she's also overseeing the return of nighttime economy. She just said to me, there's going to be lots of people going out back into Bristol's nightlife. We want people to do it, but there's risks involved with it. Water safety, mental health, drugs, you drink, there's going to be a lot of people vulnerable. And I said, and she's talked about a scheme in Amsterdam where people were out on the streets to support people. And then she happened to say, but I don't think we've got the resource for that in the city. I said, but that's already happened, right? We've had street pastors. And then I said, come and talk to Roger and Coles right now. And then we just had that chat, and now she's buzzing. She's, oh, fantastic, street pastors could be out on the streets. So that connectivity, the opportunity for those conversations in which what the church wants to do, and not just what it wants to do, but what it wants to be, is made possible in a city that is actually can benefit from the church being what it wants to be. And we're recognizing that relationship. That's quite special. Apart from all the other things everyone knows about the church being involved in building homes, city finance, and all the rest of it. So I think it's really exciting. But just think back to 2014 or 2010. We have to think about the journey that's gone on in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, no, we've come a long way. I mean, I'm thinking to that last city office where maybe there were 400 there, and perhaps 40 or so of those I recognise really from the Christian community. So being sort of salt and yeast in those situations.
Yeah, doing stuff. Yeah, it's I think it's incredible. And as a mayor of this, the city, I know so many of the positive outcomes that we've ended up focusing on has been, in part through the influence of people of faith, and then getting real stuff done that changes the life chances of people in Bristol. Again, faith communities have been really on the front of getting those things done. Our officers in the council have been blown away, again, particularly in children's services, whether it be recruiting new foster families, the Feeding Bristol initiative, work on period poverty. I think that for many of our officers, it's eyes open to an energy, to a group of people who perhaps haven't been fully appreciated in the past and have done stuff off in their own parallel worlds, but not necessarily been really integrated into city leadership.
That's great. And yet there's so much more, isn't there? And particularly, I suppose, it'd be really interesting as you look ahead to the next 3 years and then beyond to sort of 2050. What comments might you have for the Christian community to start to have that bigger vision, contributing to help transform the city alongside, your One City plan to 2050, to make Bristol a more fair and healthy and sustainable city, that city of hope that we talk about?
Well, I think my starting point is, even if I wasn't a person of faith, knowing what the church would claim about itself would lead me to issue the challenge. Well, we're looking for a vision. Tell us what it is, right? Tell us what we're for. You claim to have connection to God and to be inspired by the Holy Spirit. You should be well placed to talk to Bristol about its priorities and its calling. And so I offer that as a challenge, really. Then there is a piece of raw material that we've used to bring the city together, and that's the One City plan. And again, remember, Bristol is now a city of hope, and there's a reason for that. There were conversations that took place around what hope is and where we get our hope. And the proverb I've used continuously, we don't despise our suffering. Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. So we know that even in the middle of all these trials that we're facing, historically and the more recent trials, if we can find the wherewithal to overcome them, they can become evidence, the source of our ability to persevere. And that becomes the building blocks of character, and that character becomes our hope. I think there's a fantastic ancient wisdom in that actually needs to be applied right now. But we do need the support to get through the sufferings. It's not an automatic journey from suffering to perseverance. Suffering can break people down and break life down. But if there can be the compassion, the solidarity, the community around individuals, families, and communities to overcome, then I don't want to make flippant of the suffering and the loss through COVID and everything else, but it could be the basis for a more resilient, a stronger city of hope. But that pastoral role, along with the practical role, I think is a huge opportunity for the church, and challenged.
We've been through a whole crisis. The church has risen up to that. You've mentioned a few things, including the whole food poverty. But as we come out, as we emerge from that whole COVID-19 situation, what would you be saying in terms of what the Christian community can be doing around recovery and renewal out of that crisis?
Well, I'd say please develop a real kind of sense of understanding of what you mean by recovery and renewal.
Yeah.
Because it's a very broad scope, but we are talking about some very specific challenges that we're facing, right? Mental health, educational catch-up, family recovery, whether, domestic violence has gone up, child abuse has gone up. Now, whether that be in a new context or families reconciling, economic recovery as well, people getting back to some sense of financial security. News this morning was just sharing a latest IPPR report that says working poverty has gone up as well. It's been a long-term trend, but it's been exacerbated over the last last year or so. So I'd say identify a number of specific areas in which you really want to bring a definition of what recovery means, and then that will help you work out what you do. But like a friend says to me, you can't boil the ocean, right? You have to bring some focus to that. But look, and renewal is a church's business, isn't it? Isn't that at the heart of the message, right? It's about renewal. So again, pray into it, think about that pastoral leadership you can offer.
Is there finally a bit of general advice that you give to the Christian community in terms of sort of future leadership for the city?
I mean, I was really taken by a few lines by Martin Luther King, as I always am. And he says, true compassion is more than flinging a coin at a beggar. It begins to look at the structures that produce beggars. So on the Jericho Road, you don't just go and pick up the victims. You ask, why do people keep being robbed on this road? And I think that is a challenge and an opportunity for the church. I saw when we used to work at Tearfund, that whole debate, is it verbal proclamation or is it social action? Well, two sides of the same coin, right? But we've had that debate and we've seen a level of social action, and that is absolutely fantastic. But I think, dare I suggest, that the stage we need to move into is saying, actually, it's a kingdom issue, right? Kingdoms are structures. Yeah. And we have to say, how is the world working? That actually means that we have this increasing number of working families living in poverty, that we have 1 in 4 children in the city living in income-deprived households. What are the systems that are producing that on a day-to-day basis that I end up going and dealing with the results? So I would suggest, we do need to think about leadership and people moving into positions of leadership. That could be elected, but it could also be going to the magistracy. It could be going to the National Health Service to join the boards of our hospital trusts. Again, shaping services that cost millions upon millions of pounds that determine life chances of people's becoming school governors. There are ways of moving into positions in the city that actually begin to influence the way the city actually works. And I'd really welcome that. And again, going back to King, remember, this has been a role of the church historically. If you think of King, Martin Luther King grew up in segregation and yet went on to take his PhD and become a national and international leader. Well, those leadership skills came from a church that had a conveyor belt of talent development, right? And producing leaders and produce political leaders. So I think we taking a deep breath, having some prayer, and thinking about taking that leadership into our political, social justice, economic, education structures, transport structures as well, would be quite something special.
Just as a final thought from me, really thank you so much for your leadership, for your inspiration, and for your challenge to us. And we just pray over the next 3 years and beyond to 2050 that we'll be rising up on this together. So it's been a privilege to walk this together, and let's keep walking over these next years. But God bless you for all that you're being and doing.
Thank you.